Hey, JD here. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe, please hit like. And what I have here is the Contrate wheel. I think that's what it's called. Contrate wheel for a carriage clock. Now, I got this thing running. It would stop where that little black mark is. And I'm wondering, why is the damn thing stopping? So I put it in my lathe, mounted up in my lathe. And I'm just tapping these arms because the clock was moving closer to the pinion as it got to where those dots are for these arms. So I figured it's brass, so I should be able to tap that just a bit to straighten it up, and I'll eyeball that and spin it on my lathe. So this is kind of my own little fix. Now what I ended up doing was tapping it a little bit too much, and now it was going away from where that gear would be. So I think I had to stop this and re-tap it. So it's not something I thought would be the problem, because I was working on this clock yesterday and I thought maybe it was a tooth or something that was jamming at that particular spot. Now somewhere in my mess of tools I do have a dial indicator, but I couldn't find it. I would have to dig to find that. And so turns out you can just use your tip over tool rest as a dial indicator. So I wanted to put that inside of maybe one of my balance adjusting devices. I've got a bunch of them, but it's too wide. The actual the arm there is a lot too long actually to put in that device. So I thought, okay, I'll just use my tip over tool rest. I'll put it as close to those teeth as I can and spin it very slowly and look at what kind of gap I'm getting between the teeth and that tip over tool rest. And I could actually see quite easily where that gap was. So I thought, okay, maybe I pounded it a bit too much that way, so let's just pound it back a bit. I'm using the word pound, but what I meant was tap it back a bit. And I just tapped it right there and then rotated it to see what kind of a gap I have between the tip over tool rest and the teeth. And I'll swear here, I'll say, by golly, it was perfect, unbelievable. Now I grabbed this with the pinion on the back end, as you can see in my collet. It's capturing the pinion there, so you're just hoping that that's going to be true and straight. Otherwise, I would have to use my tailstock and kind of rest it on the other side as well. Now these pivots that are on the end, with Paul, the gentleman who gave me this clock, he pivoted this by using what they call quick pivots. And a quick pivot's like a hat with a pivot on it. I've made quick pivots before, not even knowing that they existed in the clock world, but they're more in the clock world than the watch or pocket watch world. So I got the quick pivot on there. Right now my lips are moving because I'm talking to my son the exact same time I'm doing this. And the quick pivot is just slightly a bit bent, but it didn't seem to matter. So now I've got the Contrate wheel out and I'm putting it back in the clock. I'm very carefully separating the plates here, and I've got them pinned on the bottom but unpinned on the top. And I'm able to just move them ever so slightly to get that wheel back in place. And you got to use your fingers. There's no way I could get in there with any gloves, but that's fine. It's an old clock and it's brass, so it shouldn't stain. So once I got that wheel in, I put the pins back in. They're pretty long. I've obviously sped up the video a bit, just so you guys don't get incredibly bored. And here I'm just trying to put a little bit of action on that wheel by taking the mainspring barrel and putting a little pressure on the teeth just to spin it a bit. So now that I've got that in there, I'm putting the platform balance back on. So you just sort of have to tuck it in and then rotate it in. So the position of this platform balance is absolutely 1000% critical. You put the 4 screws in and you don't tighten them. You put them in and you leave them loose. And once you've put these screws in, and they're the right screws, because I think I screwed this up. This screw needed to be on the top and not the bottom. There's 2 different screws. Some watchmaker might have flipped it a while back. And once you do that, you can then put a little bit of power on the mainspring. And that power will go through to the pinion and into the escapement and the pallet fork and over to the balance itself. So I've got that all lined up right now. And it won't run. I put a little bit of power on here. I've got a a key here that's a safe key because there's a huge handle on it, so it's not going to slip and come off. So I'm farting with it right now to get the adjustment between the teeth of the Contrate wheel and the actual pinion of the escapement, and they have to match absolutely perfectly for this thing to run. Now you see me let go and it's running really well right now. I'm thinking, oh, that's perfect. I'm going to tighten that down. So what I do is, after it's running for a while, I know it's done a full couple of spins of the Contrate wheel, then I know it's working. Then I'll put a little pressure on the plate on the top. Without moving it, I'll tighten those screws down. So I'm very carefully touching this and then tightening the screws. And I think when I tightened that screw, that it was the wrong damn screw. So I had to flip that screw with the one on top, just above it, to make sure I've got the right screw in place. And then I can actually adjust the platform balance. So I've done work on platform balances, like repivoted the balance itself. A gentleman got a hold of me today who's in California and said, is there any chance you can fix my carriage clock? It's got a broken pivot on the upper balance. Yes, I can do that. The only problem is shipping, and sometimes at the border they think I bought the clock and will charge me a fortune. So it is possible. I can fix these things. I tend to lose money fixing these because it takes so much time to get them running properly. It's just not a money-making adventure at all. So I do this as a hobby, but I do like to get compensated for it. So if you're up in Canada, please get a hold of me if you want me to work on your pocket watches, or if you have one of these clocks that has a bad balance or something, you can get a hold of me and I might be able to fix it for you. So here I have it perfectly set up, and I'm tightening this, and I realize that it's not working. So let me fart with it some more, loosen these up, reposition it, and then get it going again, and there we go. I got it going. Now I'm very carefully tightening it, and I'm sitting here watching it run at this moment. So there we go. Done. Perfect.